Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. Good vach. As our custom is, we're starting back at regular time, which is 8 o'clock West time. Shavua Tov, everyone. Good. And 11 p.m. Eastern time. So for those still in Shabbos, we'll watch this in the recording. So our custom is, thank you, Judith, that we tell a story of tzaddikim, if we can, of the Baal Shem Tov. This week we're going to actually tell stories of other tzaddikim. The famous story connected to this week's parsha actually goes back a few hundred years before Chassidus started, in the days of the Holy Ari Kodesh. The story goes, this is a famous, well-known story in the holy city of Tzfat, connected to the parsha about the laws of the showbread, of the lechem aponim, the bread that was in the temple, inside the sanctuary, the heichal, the Kodesh, that was on the shulchan, on the table, on the plate, on the table. So it's the showbread that they changed every week. We learned about it in the 7th reading of this week's parsha. So there was a simple yid who he and his wife were Maranos, who made it over, as many Jews did in those days, in the mid-1500s, from Spain or Portugal, and they made their way over to the holy city of Tzfas. A large amount of the members that were part of the Kabbalistic chevra in the city of Tzfas were themselves either descendants or those who came out of from Spain, including the Beis Yosef and other of the big giants of that time. And so this simple family, a couple who had very little knowledge about Torah because of their upbringing, but made sure to come to all the classes of the rabbi in Tzfas, of their shul. And the rabbi was talking about the lechem aponim, the showbread, the bread that was in the temple, and how the Kohen was diligent in his service, and how the bread was prepared, and how the dough was prepared, and the materials, the flour had to be received 14 times, and the kneading and the kavanot, the intentions you have to have when one is preparing bread for Hashem, for the korban, the lechem aponim, and listening to all this and how it was part of the service, the yid's heart was ignited and his mind started to race, and he had this amazing idea. And he comes home to his wife and he says to his wife, I have this fabulous idea. I just learned today about the lechem aponim, the bread, the showbread in the temple, and how it was prepared, and the kavanot, and the diligent, and the preparation, making sure the flour received, and it was mamish, bread for a king, with the details and the attention, and how much it was part of the service, and it gave pleasure to Hashem. I have an idea. If you want to join me with this idea, together we can make it happen. Is that we will prepare the bread in a way that it was according to the halacha of how they prepared the bread, according to the laws of how they prepared the bread for the lechem aponim. It means she has to be in her time of purity, and in the sieving, all the details of the halachas that he learned in his class, they're going to apply to Friday or Thursday. They're going to prepare bread, and the Erev Shabbos he's going to sneak in, and he's going to place it inside the Holy Ark, and in the synagogue where the Torahs are. And hopefully God will be very happy with this effort and sacrifice that he and his wife are doing. So she says, sure, of course, it sounds like an amazing idea. So together they gather the materials, and she prepares the bread so beautifully, and so she's in a state of purity, and she's sieving the bread, everything, all the details of how he studied in this class. And he waited at a quiet moment Friday afternoon when people were getting ready for the Shabbos, so the shul was empty. And he came in and he placed the two chalas in the Orna Kodesh, and that was that. And he figured he's going to wait till early Shabbos morning and see if they're still there. So the next that after he left the shul, the gabbai, the attendant of the shul, comes into the shul, and like he always does, to check the Torahs, everything's in order, and he sees that there's 2 loaves of bread. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't think it too deep into it, and he takes the loaves of bread and he brings it home. He figures he'll eat it, with his family, and they're excellent bread. The husband, who didn't know that the gabbai, the attendant, took the chalas, the next morning comes in, opens the ark, and no one's there yet, and he sees the chalas are gone, and he's Pashut so excited. Hashem took his offering, and he told his wife, Hashem took his offering. That's it. We have to do this every week, as often as we can, and with all the details. So he and his wife continued this practice for a long time. In the meantime, the rabbi who gave the speech one week himself came into the shul, wanted a quiet moment to prepare his speech for the Friday night, and he was in the corner where no one would notice him if they would come in. And of course, this person runs in on Erev Shabbos like he did every week now. And he quickly gave a glance. He didn't notice anyone. He opens the ark. He takes the 2 loaves of bread. He puts it in. He makes a great prayer to Hashem, asking Hashem to forgive him. And he's like the prayer he always does. So he's making kind of a little bit of commotion. And the rabbi is watching all this. And he's telling Hashem to please take his offering. And he closes the ark. He bows a bit and he walks out. The rabbi is outraged. What is this person doing? Who puts bread in the Orna Kodesh and thinks it's a sacrifice? He knew right away, and he's watching it. After he finishes everything, he calls back in this man. He says, "What were you doing just now?" So he says, he's flabbergasted. He didn't know that someone was there. He said, "Well, I'm offering. I learned in your class about the laws of the showbread, of the lechem hapanim. I want to offer. Me and my wife have been offering this bread, and Hashem has been accepting it." He goes, "What are you ridiculous? Hashem's not. This is not a sacrifice." He says, "I'm sure the gabbai takes it when he comes after you and he eats it at home. What are you being a fool?" And he waited a little, and sure the gabbai comes in, and the rabbi says to the gabbai, "Come here." He says, have you been taking the bread? Be honest. Have you been taking the bread every week? He says, "Yes." And he says, "See, this is ridiculous. Don't do it again." A short time later, a messenger comes from the Holy Ari to this rabbi, and it says that Rizal wants to see you immediately. This rabbi comes, and he comes to Rizal, and the Rizal tells him, you should go spend the next few hours preparing to say goodbye to your wife and your children, because you're going to pass away. He says, "Why? What happened?" He said, "Ever since the destruction of the temple, God was Pashut yearning for the sacrifices, the actual sacrifices. I know we have in Shama Parmasif Husseinu that when we read about the sacrifices, but God wanted the actual sacrifices. And when you stopped this person from bringing the bread to God, you took away again a second time the sacrifice. It was to God as if the temple was destroyed a third time, because God really took pleasure in this couple's efforts. Although the gabbai took it, that wasn't important. The idea was that when he put it into the ark, that was to God like a sacrifice. And if you stopped it, and therefore you made God feel like there's a third destruction. So that they say that the people in Tzfas said that he was really old at that point, the rabbi, and he really was past his time of living. And the reason why he lived so long was because of the fact that this couple was bringing the sacrifice based on his Dvar Torah. So they stopped bringing it. So his time was up. All right, that's the story. And another short story, waiting for others to join. So another story that's actually connected a bit to also the idea of sacrifice of the 2 loaves. The fourth Rebbe Chabad is known as the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash was the youngest of the sons of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe Chabad, Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the first. And the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek was very involved in different things of Askanim, especially when it came to different decrees that the government in Russia at the time under the Tsar was always trying to do against Jews and Jewish education and study of Torah, etc. So most of the times the Tzemach Tzedek would go himself, but sometimes he would send messengers. This time he wanted that his youngest son, Reb Shmuel, the Marash, would be the one that would be the Askin, the one that's going to go and try to annul the decree. But he sent his older brother, which was almost 20 years older than him, Rabbi Yehuda Leib, I think his name was, the Maril, to be with him, accompany him. But this was a mission for the Marash. Although he was the younger brother, this was what the Tzemach Tzedek wanted. So really the one taking the lead was the Rebbe Marash. The Maril was just accompanying him. So the Reb Rash said to the Mariel, I have one condition. I'll let you travel with me. And that is that your custom is, because you're a great tzaddik, is whenever you go to a city, and they would travel through the cities until they got to Moscow, to Leningrad, is that you would Stalingrad, right? That you would Petersburg, you would people come to you and ask you for brachos, for blessings, and you give it to them. But I'm not comfortable with that, because our father, the Tzemach Tzedek, is the Rabbi. There's only one Rabbi, and I don't want to be you giving brachos. That's the condition. So the Mariel agreed, and surely they were going from city to city. In every city they came, everyone came out to ask the Mariel for blessings, and he gave a condition, and they came and they were pleading this story, that story, and his heart was breaking. He wanted to help these people, but he made a promise to his brother. So he said, sorry, I can't give a blessing. One city they stopped, and a lady comes in, and she's talking. She needs to have children. She wants children, and she's begging, and she's ready to do anything, and she's begging anything she wants, that her and her husband should be blessed with children. And Mariel said, sorry, I can't help you. After she continues to mamish plead and beg, and she was very persistent, and she herself was getting agitated. So finally the Mariel felt so broken that he couldn't help her. He says, you know what, go to my brother the Marash. So she comes to the Marash, and she starts again begging and crying and carrying on. So the Rebbe Marash says, I can't bless you. And really she just was, the Marash got so agitated himself, he told his brother, quickly into the wagon, let's go. But she was a resourceful woman, and she took a stick and put it into the wheels of the wagon, and the wagon couldn't move. So she said, I'm not letting you go until you give me a blessing. So finally the Marash was so agitated, he said, go take 2 kichels, go take a kichel. A kichel is like a sweet bread, that they would eat back in the day. You could look at them. A kichel, everyone knows a kichel. You eat it at a kiddush, at a yard site. It's like a sweet dough cookie. And he was basically saying, go fly a kite, kind of, go take a kichel. And she was quiet. She moved the stick, and they drove. But after a few months, the Tzemach Tzedek passed away, and the Rebbe Marash became the Rebbe in the city of Lubavitch. About a year later, this man comes to Lubavitch with gifts and cakes and all kind of nice things. And he says to the Rebbe Marash, I'm here to give you a thank you, a bracha, for the fact that you helped us have children. He goes, what are you talking about? He said the story that my wife was very persistent, and you told her to eat a kichel, and she ate the kichel, and we had children. But she brought 2 cakes. So the Rebbe says, why did you bring 2 cakes? I mean, you had 1 kichel, and you had 1 child. So he said, no, my wife wasn't sure if 1 was enough. So she had 2 kichels. So she had 2 kichels, we had twins. So the Rebbe Marash said like this. He said, I want you to know that when your wife came to me, I saw there's no way for her to have children. There was no way. The gates were closed. You guys weren't destined to have children. So I told her, go have a kichel, like, please leave us. But because you had such emunah tzaddikim, you had such belief in tzaddikim, that when you heard it, you said, this is our solution. The emunah tzaddikim, the belief you had in tzaddikim, broke the barrier. Okay, these are the stories for this week. We're going to just start learning the laws of Tefillah. Okay. Let's share. Hey, Jonathan, hold on a second. We'll start learning the laws of Tefillah. Just finish the stories. Give me 1 second. Let's bring up the laws. Okay, we're holding on pay and law number. We're holding law number 9. So we learned that we have the different times of the year that we insert the prayer for rain and acknowledging rain after Shemoneh Esrei. We start asking for rain, mentioning rain, and then we ask for rain on the 23rd, in this 3rd, 4th, 5th of December, and then or 7th of Mar Cheshvan if you're in Eretz Yisrael, and we stop asking for rain, and those who switch over to asking for dew is on the first day of Pesach in the afternoon by the Musaf, or late morning by the Musaf davening. So he says, what happens if Ta'ar b'mayrav leil rishon shel Pesach? So the evening before, you switch over, which is when you daven Ma'ariv, Pesach, Seder night, the first night. And you made a mistake, and you davened a weekday davening. So you're supposed to be davening Yom Tov, but you thought you were dreaming, and you forgot whatever. You're davening the Tefillas Arvis of Chol during the Yom Tov night. And he remembers, or she remembers, after you started already saying the blessing for the Baruch Aleinu. And what happens when you say Baruch Aleinu? When you make a mistake, the law is if you daven Friday night and you dream off a little bit and what have you, and you start saying the tefillah of the week, so then you have to start. When you remember whatever blessing you're in the middle, you have to finish the blessing. So let's say where you remember is the blessing of Baruch Aleinu, of asking for or not asking for rain. So the question is, what do? The davening of the week has already stopped because the congregation is in Yom Tov davening, and then tomorrow, the next day, they're going to start omitting the prayer for rain. So should you ask for rain when there will no longer be a prayer for rain by the congregation? The congregation stopped asking for rain because tonight they're all davening the Yom Tov davening. Because he has to complete the bracha. You don't ask for rain, even though we didn't stop asking for rain or make the tefillah for tal until Pesach Musaf. Kivan shegam hatzibur, because once the congregation stops saying it, you should admit it also. Let's say the same thing happens on December when we start asking for rain, and that falls out on a Shabbos. Whatever the day in December that we would start asking for rain falls out on a Shabbos. So again, the davening of the Shabbos is Shabbos davening. We don't have the prayer that we would ask for rain, which is Baruch Aleinu. We don't say that until Saturday night. And you're the same. You've started to do the weekday prayer. You said Baruch Aleinu, you have to finish the bracha. Should you add rain or not? You don't add rain, even though according to the calendar, hypothetically, had it not been Shabbos, you would add rain, but the congregation didn't start asking for rain. Because the congregation didn't start asking for rain, and the law is that the individual goes with the congregation, which is an important law because it affects how things are in a situation where a person is not part of a congregation. When do they start adding these things? Okay. Shachach, there's no footnotes on this. We're going to continue. Shachach yalev yavi b'shchadish. This happens all the time. Is in a situation where you're davening, it's Rosh Chodesh, or it's Chol HaMoed, and you're davening a weekday prayer, and you forgot to say the Yalav Yavi, the special prayer for Rosh Chodesh, or Chol HaMoed, in Shachar Semincha. You forgot it in the morning or afternoon prayer, which are biblical to daven these prayers. Because those are prayers that they're not an adav. It's not even suffix an argument about like they have by Ma'ariv. B'shachas Mincha, you forget to say Av Yavi. Bein b'shachas bein Mincha bein Ma'ariv. Sorry, Rosh Chodesh b'shachas Mincha, and in Chol HaMoed you forget either shachas Mincha or Ma'ariv. In Nisra Kodim Sham Yiyur L'Ratzit. Let's say you waited all the way to the end of the davening, and you're about to say that final line, to complete the davening, but you remembered before you said Yil. So you haven't really kind of finalized the davening. Now you remembered, I forgot to say Yalav Yavi. Again, these things happens all the time. It's Chayzer Maskal Ritzei. So you go all the way back, just a few blessings back, to the Ritzei. After Shema Kodeinu, you start Ritzei, and then you again assert the Yalav Yavi. And then you continue on until the end, then you end the Shemoneh Esrei. Means you continue with Modim, etc. And the law is, let's say you remember before you said Modim, but you forget, you already completed the blessing of Amachsur Shchinas L'Tzion. You finished Ritzei. So you go back to Ritzei. So from when you finish Amachsur Shchinas L'Tzion until Yil Ratzon, you go back to the beginning of Ritzei, and you insert the Yalav Yav in its proper place. and then you complete the bracha and continue Modim Simshalam, finishing off the Shemoneh Esrei. K'mayishe kasafti Kivin Shesam Brachas Masr Nesei Tzarich Laskor to say K'mayishe kasafti Masha V'Ruach, same like we gave similar laws when it came to the question of remembering to mention rain. Let's say you said Ritzei, and in the place where you're supposed to add Yalav Yavai, you forget, but you didn't yet finish the bracha. Right before you finish the bracha, you haven't said a Machzor Shechnas L'Tzion. Then you just say it right where you're holding, and then start again, which is the last little part of Ritzei, of when you say after the Yalav Yavai. So basically, you don't start the bracha from the beginning. You just start saying Yalav Yavai, you say and then you continue davening through Moedim Simshalam, and you finish the daven. And let's say you completed the Shemoneh Esrei. Or Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv. You've said Yil Ratzi means you completed the Shemoneh Esrei. Chayzil Rosh Tefillah, then you can't go back to Ritzei. You have to start the Shemoneh Esrei all from the beginning, from the first of the 18 blessings. Uberesh Chodesh Shachach Yal Yaveh V'Yaveh Uberesh Chodesh Shachach Yal Yaveh V'Ma'ariv. What happens if on Rosh Chodesh you forget in the Ma'ariv davening, which is the night entering Rosh Chodesh? Doesn't make a difference if it's a 2-night Rosh Chodesh or a 1-day Rosh Chodesh, meaning if it's to be 2-day Rosh Chodesh, you would have the first Ma'ariv and the second Ma'ariv. Doesn't make any difference if it's the first Ma'ariv or the second Ma'ariv. Once you finish the bracha, you do not go back. Why? And you finish the bracha, and you don't have to go back for Yalav Yavai. But the reason is because at the end of the day we don't know what day is Rosh Chodesh, but the Rosh Chodesh should only be sanctified in the morning. So to say Yalav Yavai the night before it's not. I mean, we say Yalav Yavai, we don't say Tachnon already, we don't say Tachnon Erev Rosh Chodesh, but the Rosh Chodesh itself wasn't announced until at least the morning. So it's not so severe that you didn't insert the Yalav Yavai. So if you've continued the blessing, just continue it. But if that would happen in Shachris or Mincha, then you have to go back. Yalav Yavai, because it's Yom Tov. Yom Tov starts right by Ma'ariv. So if you get Yalav Yavai, then the system works again. It depends if you remember before Machzor Shnas L'Tzion, if it's before you say Yil Ratzain, or if it's after Yil Ratzain, you have to go back to the beginning of Shemoneh Esrei. Okay, footnote number 10, the end of the law. Okay, so he's going to explain why we didn't do the Rosh Chodesh sacrifice at night. Sorry, we didn't sanctify the Rosh Chodesh at night. Before the establishment of the calendar, Rosh Chodesh was decreed by the Bezdin, the court in Jerusalem. They never did it at night, but waited until the day when it was to be declared Rosh Chodesh. It means they had the witnesses, wherever the system was at the time when they were doing it. But when they were Mekadesh, based usually on the witnesses, so even if they knew the information before, they didn't announce the Chodesh until the next morning. Once a fixed calendar was established, we know in advance when Rosh Chodesh will fall, and therefore, it's in theory, Rosh Chodesh starts on Ma'ariv, and we therefore say Yalav Yavai the night of Rosh Chodesh. Nevertheless, the requirement is less stringent at night, and its omission does not require repetition of the Shemoneh Esrei. So he says that to go back, even not just a repetition of the Shemoneh Esrei, because he says over here. Once you complete the bracha, if you remember before the end of the bracha, then you can say Yalav Yavai. But once you finish the bracha, we don't go back, even to Ritzei, and surely we don't go back to the beginning of Shemoneh Esrei if you finish the Shemoneh Esrei. Okay, 11. Shachach b'Rosh Chodesh b'chol hamoed Yalav Yavai b'shachris. Let's say you forget, like we said before, you forget the Yalav Yavai in the morning. Al ha'pishla nisgar la'acher shispal musaf. When you don't even remember that you forgot to say it. You don't remember until you already daven Musaf. Shekfar Zacher Shal Rosh Chodesh V'Shal Chol HaMoed, and this is when it applied to Rosh Chodesh or Chol HaMoed.
that you already mentioned now, Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed in the Musaf, right? The Musaf follows the Shachar, so you wasn't like you totally forgot about Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed because you mentioned it in the second prayer of Musaf. So you think maybe the fact that I mentioned it in Musaf kind of covers my back for forgetting about it in Shachris, and I didn't remember till now, and I already davened Musaf, so maybe I don't have to do Shachris again. Shachris doesn't make a difference, even though you mentioned Chol Hamoed or Rosh Chodesh in the Musaf prayer, you have to go back and say it for in the Shachris. The Imavers Mana. And what happens if it's the time you remember it's too late to daven Shachris? It's already past the time when one could daven the morning prayer. So so then you would say two Shemoneh Esreis in Mincha. Again, so this is showing the importance that if you missed it out, even though you said the Musaf, and even though now it's past the time of Shachris and morning prayers, you still would have to continue saying it. You would say it again with the Mincha. And he says, Ayin Shai Shuva Siman Kuf Chavchas Sifkat Yud Beis Kidakaman Chafaf Sif Dalid Lakaman Siman Chaf Sif Yud. Okay, we'll have more on this in the coming chapters. Let's see any footnotes. 11. Okay, he says see chapter 21. All right, Mikol Makim. Sorry, Bechol Makim Shu Tzarch Las L'Spar Tzarch L'Hamtim K'dei Dal Hilach Dal Dam. So now he just gives us an instruction. This that it says that a person has to daven again. So what do? Let's say you finish Osei Shalom, and you're about, I forgot Yalav, you have to daven again, or anything else that you have to daven again for. If you forget the rain, etc. So you don't just right away start davening again. Wait the time it takes to walk for Amos, which is how long? Footnote number 12 will tell us. You should not blend the two prayers as one, but pause for a few seconds before starting Shemoneh Esrei anew. Okay, so how long does it take to walk, let's say 6 feet or 8 feet? It takes about 30, 40 seconds, if less. So then that you wait that time, showing that there's a pause, and you're starting the prayer again, as opposed to just going one long prayer. Let's do one more long, we'll stop here. Shliach tzibur shetar b'tfilas halachos. What happens if you're the chazan? And as the chazan, so every chazan has the private prayer, the silent prayer that you daven with a minyan. But you've forgotten, so obviously if you forget in the early stages, where you just have to make a quick back, so you're not really holding up the congregation. But let's say you forgot it and you finished the whole Shemoneh Esrei. You don't daven a second time because it's not right for the congregation. It's a burden for the congregation to wait until you daven Shemoneh Esrei a second time, even if you plan on doing it fast. When you do the loud Shemoneh Esrei, the repetition, so then that will be your doing over the Shemoneh Esrei, and therefore, in this case, there's a difference. He says a certain thing. So the regular rule is that if you're a chazan, when you finish the Sim Shalom, you don't say we don't do the 3 steps back, because we do that in the Kaddish of the long Kaddish. So what do? You don't say al kai nitzar. You just finish Sim Shalom. But here you have to daven a second time because you're leading the congregation, and you owe a second Shemoneh Esrei because you missed out a Yalav Yavai. So in this case, after you finish Sim Shalom, you would say quietly. It doesn't say quietly, but that's the rule. You say quietly the final davening, the Al-Kai Nitzar, you go back 3 steps. Incidentally, some people have the custom, not the custom. It works out sometimes. In some shows they do it, some shows they don't do it. Which is that sometimes they want, they don't have. Let's say during a regular tefillah, they won't have a regular. This is just a chazan every morning when davening. Sometimes someone is holding the repetition of the Shemoneh Esrei. But the congregation is holding the repetition, but some person's holding the beginning of the Shemoneh Esrei. So he'll volunteer, however that works out, to daven the loud Shemoneh Esrei as instead of the silent Shemoneh Esrei. So he's just saying Shemoneh Esrei now for the first time. Same thing that you would afterwards quietly say the Al-Kai Nitzar and do the 3 steps backwards. Okay. But if he forgot, he made a mistake in the first three blessings, and then to go back is not such a big deal because it's just a time. So then you could go back, meaning to say, as long as back is not going to cause too much delay in time. Hey, Danny. So then you're okay. It's okay. But if you have to say the whole thing again, and that's going to cause this congregation to wait, it's not allowed, and you just repeat it in the Shemoneh Esrei, and you just finish off the Shemoneh Esrei with the L'kai Nitzar. So that covers you for what you have to do again. All right. So he says like this: it'd be a burden for the congregation to wait for him to complete the silent Shemoneh Esrei a second time. Obviously, okay. 14 is when the Chazan repeats Shemoneh Esrei aloud, he does not add the prayer L'kai Nitzar, nor does he step back 3 paces until after the whole Kodesh. So, like I said before, so therefore, but in this case, you also have an obligation to daven again yourself because you didn't daven properly the first time. You missed out Yalav Yavai. So in this case, and like I said, in the case sometimes this in Yerushalayim, I see it all the time where someone will walk in and be holding the silent Shemoneh Esrei, and he'll go to the Amud to do his silent Shemoneh Esrei in the repetition, and then he would have to also say the L'kai Nitzar and 3 steps back because he didn't have Shemoneh Esrei yet. I think we have one more footnote. Yeah, another word, what are we talking about? In the first 3 blessings. In other words, since he's still towards the beginning of his own Shemoneh Esrei, the amount of time that his repetition will take will be minimal, and therefore, obviously, it's not such a big deal. Okay, I think we're going to stop here unless anyone has any quick questions. All right.